Princess Lyra of Aloria stood at the tall window of her tower, staring at the endless city that shimmered beneath the twin suns. Golden streets stretched far, lined with buildings of silver and crystal that reflected the sunlight like stars scattered on the ground. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding her, Lyra felt nothing but emptiness. For years she had hoped for love, believing in the stories her nursemaid had whispered as a child. Tales of knights, brave heroes, and kind-hearted princes who would come and sweep her away. But the reality of her life was far different. One after another, suitor after suitor had come to Aloria offering gifts, promises, and flattery. Each one had left her more disappointed than the last. Some cared only for her title, others for her riches. Few were honest. Lyra had tried. She had smiled politely, listened patiently, and even offered friendship. Yet every encounter ended the same: hollow words, shallow promises, and broken trust. Slowly, she had begun to give up on the idea of love altogether. She retreated into her tower, choosing books, starlight, and the hum of machines as her companions. Her only constant friend was Storym, a small, silver robotic advisor. Storym had been with her since childhood, programmed with both wisdom and gentle humor. Its eyes glowed softly as it hovered nearby, reading her expressions like an old friend. "Your Highness," Storym said one morning, its voice a soft hum, "I notice you have avoided the garden again." "The sun is kind today," Lyra smiled faintly. "I do not need the garden, Storym. The city is enough." "The city may shine," Storym replied, "but it lacks the warmth of human touch and the unpredictability of life beyond these walls." Lyra shook her head. "Life beyond these walls only brings disappointment. I have learned that humans, at least those who come here, care for titles, not hearts." Storym did not respond immediately, as if considering her words. Finally, it said, "Perhaps one day a human may surprise you, one who asks not for your crown but for your name." Lyra glanced at it, amused despite herself. "A name, Storym? That is hardly enough to matter." But the idea lingered in her mind as she turned back to the window. A name. Could someone truly care for her simply as Lyra, not the Princess of Aloria? She doubted it, yet she could not shake the curiosity that rose like a gentle tide within her chest. That afternoon, a delegation arrived from the neighboring star system of Therion. Ambassadors, traders, and scholars crowded the palace, their ships gleaming in the sunlight as they docked in the harbor. It was the sort of event Lyra had grown used to ignoring, yet something in the air felt different. Among the delegation was a human, a rare sight in Aloria. His name was Kale. He moved through the crowd with calm confidence, yet without arrogance. Where others bowed and scraped to impress the princess, he seemed unaware of titles and ceremonies. He smiled freely, laughed easily, and listened intently to everyone he spoke with. Lyra watched him from her tower. She had seen humans before, of course. Some had been brilliant engineers, others cunning diplomats, yet none had ever seemed so genuine. There was no hint of strategy, no hidden plan behind his words, just simple curiosity and an openness she had almost forgotten existed. Later, Storym hovered near her. "The human, Kyle, he requests an audience." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "An audience? Why would I waste time speaking with another suitor?" Storym's metallic eyes glowed softly. "He is not a suitor, Your Highness. He asks only for conversation." Lyra considered this. Conversation. A simple act, yet rare in a palace where words were often weighed with politics and power. She sighed and descended from her tower to meet him. The room where they met was modest compared to the grand halls below, yet its walls were lined with screens and charts of the stars. Kyle was already there, standing quietly as he looked at the constellations projected in the air. He turned to her with a gentle smile. "Princess Lyra," he said, bowing slightly, "thank you for seeing me." Lyra regarded him carefully. "You are Kale, the human from Therion. What brings you here?" He shook his head. "Not duty. Not politics. I only wished to meet you." Lyra blinked. That was unusual. "And why would you want to meet me?" Kale's smile widened slightly, but he did not answer immediately. Instead, he said simply, "May I ask your name?" Lyra stared at him, surprised. Not his name, not his station, not what she could offer him, but her name. A small, ordinary word that carried her identity beyond her crown. "My name is Lyra," she said, almost reluctantly. "Lyra," he repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "It is beautiful, Lyra. No flattery, no false compliments. Just the sound of her name, spoken kindly." For a moment, Lyra felt something she had not felt in years. A small spark of connection, warm and gentle. Over the next few days, Kyle returned. He did not arrive with gifts or schemes, but with stories of distant worlds and human experiences. He told tales of cities made entirely of glass, of children who built machines from scraps, and of ordinary humans who did extraordinary things when they worked together. Lyra listened, fascinated. She laughed at his stories and asked questions freely, without the pretense she usually maintained around strangers. She realized that in Kale she had found something rare, a friend who saw her not as a princess but as Lyra. Word of Kale's visits spread quickly through the palace. Some nobles whispered that the princess had lost her senses, letting a mere human wander freely into her tower. Others were curious, intrigued by the unusual friendship forming. Lyra, however, did not care. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Soren observed quietly, its sensors noting every smile, every spark of laughter. "It seems, Your Highness, that curiosity may be stronger than caution." Lyra nodded. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he is exactly the person I needed to meet, though I did not know it." One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the city in shades of amber and violet, Kale and Lyra walked along the palace gardens. She pointed to the stars above. "Do humans believe in destiny?" she asked. Kyle looked up, thoughtful. "We believe in choice. Destiny is something you make, not something that is given." Lyra considered his words. All her life she had felt bound by duty and expectation. But Kale's presence reminded her that there were other ways to live, other ways to find meaning. The wind rustled through the trees carrying the scent of alien flowers, and Lyra felt a strange sense of freedom. She had closed her heart to love, believing it would only bring pain. Yet here, in the company of a human who asked only for her name, she felt hope begin to bloom again. For the first time, Lyra realized that love was not about grandeur or ceremony. It was about connection, trust, and the simple courage to be oneself. She did not yet know what the future held, nor did she understand the dangers that lay ahead. But for this moment she allowed herself to believe that something genuine could exist, even in a palace built on power and expectation, and so, the princess who had given up on love found herself listening once more, not to suitors or nobles, but to a human who had asked only for her name. A name, a spark, and perhaps the beginning of a story neither of them could have imagined. Days passed, and the presence of Kale in Princess Lyra's life became a gentle but persistent rhythm. Unlike the other visitors who had come to the palace with ambitions or demands, Kale moved through the corridors as if he belonged to no world but the one he chose to enter. He asked no favors, accepted no gifts, and offered only his attention and stories in return. Lyra found herself anticipating his visits. Each day she would sit by the observation window, her silver hair catching the sunlight, waiting to see him appear at the tower entrance. When Kyle finally arrived, he would bow slightly, his eyes warm and curious, and ask simply, "May I join you, Lyra?" It was in these moments, away from the polished halls of the palace, that Lyra began to feel something she had long forgotten: joy. She laughed at Kale's tales of human ingenuity, of entire cities built with little more than imagination and determination, of inventors who turned scraps into machines that could heal, protect, and explore. Humans, he explained, thrived not because they were the strongest, but because they never gave up and always helped one another. "That is very different from the galaxy we live in," Lyra said one afternoon, staring at the map of distant systems projected in mid-air. "Here, power and wealth dictate every decision. Honor and kindness are rare commodities." Kyle leaned back on the cushioned bench in the tower garden, a soft breeze rustling his dark hair. "Perhaps. But even in your galaxy there are humans, and humans are clever, adaptable. We find ways to survive and even to shine where others see only obstacles." Lyra felt a spark of excitement. "Then maybe humans can teach even the Princess of Eloria something." Kyle smiled. "I hope so. But even if I fail, I will have learned something from you as well." The simplicity and sincerity of his words began to break down the walls Lyra had built around her heart. She realized that love, or at least connection, did not need grandeur or ceremony. It needed honesty, attention, and the courage to care for another being simply because they existed. Yet not all in the palace welcomed this bond. Whispers spread quickly among the nobles. A human in the princess's tower. One counselor scoffed during a meeting. He cannot understand court etiquette or the responsibilities of royalty. This is folly, another noblewoman muttered. It is dangerous to let a foreigner influence her. He may have ulterior motives. Who knows what humans want? Lyra overheard these murmurs but did not respond immediately. She knew the world would always question her decisions, especially those of the heart. Still, her curiosity and trust in Kale outweighed her fear. She had grown tired of caring what others thought. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the palace in fiery hues of orange and violet, Kale and Lyra sat in the tower's observation garden, watching the city lights awaken below. "Do you ever get tired of your own world, Kale?" Lyra asked softly. He turned to her, eyes reflecting the first stars of the evening. "Every world has its challenges, but I find that when people care about one another, even a hard world becomes brighter. That is what I hope to find here." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest that went beyond friendship. "And have you found it?" she asked. Kale hesitated, then said, "Perhaps. But I think the answer is in learning each other's names, not their titles. Knowing someone as they truly are, that is what matters." Lyra smiled, feeling the weight of centuries of royal expectation lighten slightly. Here was a being who saw her not as a princess but as Lyra, not as a symbol but as a person. Their days together grew fuller. Kale taught her about human history, of civilizations that rose from nothing, of explorers who ventured beyond the known, and of communities that thrived because they valued courage and cooperation above power. Lyra, in turn, shared her knowledge of Aloria, its technology, its art, and its history of navigating the galaxy's dangerous politics. One afternoon, while examining a model of the city's defensive grid, Kale leaned over, pointing to a weak spot in the plan. "Here," he said. "If you adjust the energy shield slightly, you could protect this sector without needing extra resources." Lyra's eyes widened. "You mean this would actually work?" Kyle nodded. "I've seen humans do similar things under pressure. Often the simplest idea is the most effective, and I think it could save lives here too." Lyra felt a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Here was a human, a stranger to her world, offering solutions no one else had dared suggest. She realized that his perspective was not limited by the traditions that bound her court. Yet their growing bond did not go unnoticed by all. Some nobles whispered of Kale's influence over the princess. "He is changing her ideas," one said. "Next, she may defy the council entirely." Lyra overheard the comments but did not flinch. Instead, she felt a quiet pride. For the first time, she understood that her choices, guided by trust and intelligence, not fear, could shape her own life. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could shape the future of her people as well. One evening, Soren spoke to her as she prepared for Kale's visit. "Your Highness, the human may bring change. Are you prepared for what that could mean?" Lyra looked out at the stars. "Change is not frightening, Soren. What is frightening is to live without hope, without curiosity, without connection. Kale reminds me of the world I used to dream about." When Kale arrived that night, he brought with him a small gift, a star map of a distant system that humans had recently explored. "I thought you might like to see new stars," he said, handing it to her. Lyra examined the map, her eyes tracing the paths of unknown planets. "These are beautiful," she whispered. "Have humans really been there?" Kyle nodded. "Yes, and each world teaches us something. Even failures show us what is possible." Lyra thought about her own life. For years she had measured failure by the disappointment of suitors and the limitations of her station. But Kale's words reminded her that failures were only lessons. That courage came from trying, from reaching out, from daring to care despite the risks. As the nights passed, Lyra and Kale shared more than stories. They spoke of dreams and fears, of places they longed to see, of the lives they wished to live beyond expectation. For Lyra, these conversations were a revelation. She had been raised to obey, to serve, to perform. But in Kale's company, she could simply exist. She could be Lyra. One evening, Lyra asked almost shyly, "Kyle, why do you care about me? Why not just leave after your duties here are done?" Kale looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because I see you, Lyra. Not the princess, not the crown, not the city. I see you. And sometimes that is enough reason to stay. Lyra felt a tear form unbidden and quickly brushed it away. She had given up on love, thinking it could only bring disappointment. Yet here was someone who saw her, valued her, and asked nothing more than to know her name. The city outside the tower lights shimmered like a sea of stars, and for the first time, Lyra felt a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with titles or duty. She realized that perhaps the human was teaching her something important, that connection, trust, and shared understanding were as powerful as any throne or army. As the twin moons rose over Aloria, casting silver light across the gardens, Lyra knew that her life was quietly, irrevocably changing. She had met a human who asked only for her name, and in return, he had given her something far greater, hope. In the days to come, their bond would be tested by challenges no one could foresee. But for now, Lyra allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a world where trust and courage mattered more than fear and politics. And in that belief, a seed of something remarkable began to grow, a connection that could change not only her heart, but the future of Aloria itself. Life in Aloria had settled into a gentle rhythm. Princess Lyra spent her days learning from Kale, exploring new ideas and laughing more freely than she had in years. Yet as the twin suns rose and set over the glittering city, a shadow was quietly creeping closer from the depths of space. It began with the distant flashes on the observation screens in the royal control room. Strange energy readings, unlike anything the Aelorian scientists had seen before, pulsed near the outer edges of the galaxy. Ships sent to investigate returned only fragments of information, strange alien patterns, vast fleets moving with unnerving precision, and a presence that seemed to anticipate every Aelorian maneuver. The council convened in the Grand Hall. Lyra observed silently as the advisors argued, their voices rising and falling in panic. "We cannot face this threat alone," one elder said, his hands trembling. "Our fleets are strong, but their numbers, their technology, it is unlike anything we have faced." Another counselor added, "Perhaps we must seek allies even among humans. They have clever minds, unusual solutions, but a human cannot understand our customs, our rules of engagement." Lyra's gaze fell on Kale, who stood quietly near the back, analyzing the same data she was studying. He did not seem afraid. Instead, there was a calm determination in his stance, a quiet confidence that unsettled the counselors but inspired Lyra. After the meeting, Lyra returned to her tower, her mind buzzing with worry and ideas. "Kyle," she said, "do you really think humans could help us defend Aloria?" Kale looked up from the projection of the alien fleet. "Not just humans, Lyra. Cooperation, strategy, courage. You have all the pieces, you just need a new perspective to connect them." Lyra frowned. "The council will never allow it. They will see your suggestions as interference." "Then we work quietly," Kyle said. "Sometimes the right action is more important than approval." That night, Lyra and Kyle pored over the data. They studied the alien fleet's movements, energy signatures, and past attacks on smaller systems. Kale noticed patterns the Aelorian scientists had missed. "They rely heavily on intimidation," he explained. "They expect opponents to panic. But if we stay calm, adapt quickly, and use the environment to our advantage, we can hold them off." Lyra's eyes lit up. "You mean like using our terrain, the city's energy shields, and diversion strategies?" Kale nodded. "Exactly. They underestimate those who can think creatively under pressure. Humans survive by adapting. Aelorians survive by planning. Together we can be unstoppable." For days they refined the plan in secret. Lyra mapped out the city's defense zones while Kale suggested improvements, new energy shield alignments, resource allocation strategies, and unconventional traps to delay the alien fleet. Their collaboration was seamless, a meeting of human ingenuity and Aelorian precision. But whispers in the palace corridors were growing louder. Some nobles had noticed the princess spending long hours with a human. "She is ignoring her duties," one remarked. "If the human fails, the city will pay the price. This is dangerous folly." Lyra overheard these words but did not reply. She had faced disappointment and doubt before. She knew the path she was choosing was risky, but it was guided by knowledge, strategy, and trust. And for the first time, she was not alone in her decisions. Kale had shown her that courage was more than personal bravery. It was shared, deliberate, and grounded in intelligence. Finally, the day came when the alien fleet appeared on the horizon. Ships of dark metal and strange geometry glinted against the starlight, moving with an eerie synchronicity. Panic rippled through the city. Citizens ran to shelters, while the palace sent orders to the fleets to prepare for battle. Lyra stood at the observation tower with Kale at her side. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension. Kale nodded. "We are as ready as we can be. Remember, Lyra, fear is their weapon. Courage and careful planning are ours." The first wave of alien ships approached, firing energy pulses that lit the sky with bursts of blue and green. Lyra's heart raced, but she focused on Kale's instructions. The energy shields activated, guided by the adjustments they had made together. The alien attacks were strong, but the shields absorbed much of the energy, and Alorian drones launched countermeasures to disrupt the enemy formations. Kale moved among the control stations, coordinating rapidly with both Alorian and human engineers. "Redirect power to the upper shields. Focus on their central attack formation. Lyra, you need to deploy the diversion drones now." Lyra followed his instructions precisely. She felt the thrill of working in perfect synchrony with someone who understood her mind and trusted her completely. The city responded like a living organism, shields pulsing, drones darting through the sky, and energy pulses deflected in precise patterns. But then disaster struck. A smaller fleet broke through the defenses and targeted the observation tower itself. Lyra's heart leaped into her throat as alarms blared. "Lyra, move!" Kale shouted, grabbing her hand. Together, they ran to the emergency escape pod. The tower shook as energy blast hit the structure. Lyra could see the city below, threatened by the invaders, yet her focus remained on Kale's steady presence beside her. In that moment, she realized something profound. True courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it, and to act together. The pod shot into the sky, dodging debris and laser fire. Lyra's hands trembled, but Kale's calm guidance kept her grounded. When the pod finally landed safely in the palace gardens, they both exhaled, relief flooding through them. "Thank you," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. Kale shook his head. "We saved ourselves together. That is all the thanks we need." As the battle raged on, Lyra returned to the control room. With Kale's guidance, she coordinated counterattacks, redirecting energy, deploying additional drones, and reinforcing the shields. Slowly, wave by wave, the alien fleet began to falter. Their formations broke and their energy pulses lost synchronization. The citizens of Aloria watched in awe as their city's defenses, led by a princess and a human working together, repelled an invasion that had seemed unstoppable. Cheers erupted from the streets when the last of the enemy ships retreated beyond the horizon, leaving the city battered but intact. After the battle, the council reluctantly acknowledged Kale's role. The human strategies were effective, one elder admitted. Another counselor nodded. His insight, combined with Princess Lyra's leadership, saved countless lives. Lyra turned to Kale, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. "You were extraordinary today," Kyle smiled softly. "You were extraordinary, Lyra. I only helped you see it." In the quiet aftermath, Lyra walked through the palace gardens, observing the citizens who had emerged from shelters to see their city still standing. She felt a surge of pride, not just in herself or Kale, but in the people of Aloria, who had faced fear and danger with courage. Soren hovered nearby, its sensors recording the scene. "It seems, Your Highness, that human ingenuity has complemented Alorian precision perfectly." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and it reminds me that trust, courage, and cooperation are as powerful as any weapon." That evening, Kale joined her by the observation window. They looked out at the stars, silent for a moment. The galaxy stretched before them, vast and full of unknowns. "Do you think the threat is over?" Lyra asked softly. Kale shook his head. "Perhaps not. But we now know what humans and Alorians can accomplish together. We will be ready next time." Lyra smiled, a quiet hope blossoming within her. The battle had tested her resolve, but it had also strengthened her heart. She realized that love, courage, and trust were intertwined, not in grand gestures or declarations, but in the quiet acts of bravery and partnership that made survival and victory possible. For the first time in years, Lyra felt that her life had purpose beyond duty and expectation. She had met a human who asked only for her name, and in return, he had shown her that even in the darkest of times, Hope and courage could prevail. As the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the city, Lyra felt a quiet determination settle in her chest. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but with Kale by her side, and the knowledge that humanity could adapt, innovate, and inspire, she knew they could face whatever came next. And so, the princess who had once given up on love now understood that courage, partnership, and trust were the beginnings of something greater than she had ever imagined. The galaxy had tested her, and in doing so had shown her a path not only to protect her people, but to embrace the possibility of connection and love once more. The city of Eloria was quiet for only a few precious hours. The night after the first wave of the alien fleet retreated was filled with whispered celebrations, repairs, and nervous glances to the sky. Princess Lyra knew that the victory was temporary. The aliens had retreated, yes, but they were not defeated. Their numbers were immense, and their strategy suggested patience, precision, and cruelty. Lyra sat in the observation tower with Kale by her side, studying the galaxy through the panoramic windows. Stars twinkled in the distance, serene and calm, but she could not ignore the dark blot of the alien fleet gathering beyond the horizon. "They will return," Lyra said quietly, more to herself than to Kale. "And when they do, the city may not be ready." Kale nodded. "Then we must make sure it is." The first defense showed that humans and Alorians working together can achieve extraordinary things. "Now we must do it again, but better." Lyra turned to him, eyes bright with determination. "We cannot rely only on the fleet or shields. We need a plan that uses every advantage we have, our terrain, our energy networks, even the citizens themselves." Kyle smiled faintly. "Exactly. And that is why I am here, to think differently, to see possibilities you might have missed because of tradition or expectation." For the next several days they worked tirelessly. Citizens volunteered to assist, engineers improved energy shields, and drones were programmed to move in complex formations that would confuse and delay the enemy. Lyra coordinated with the council, making sure to balance her authority with Kale's unconventional suggestions. Some council members resisted, wary of relying on a human's insight, but the evidence of the first battle spoke louder than their doubts. Finally, the day came when the alien fleet returned, larger and more organized than before. Dark ships blotted out the stars, moving with terrifying precision. Eloria braced itself. Citizens huddled in shelters, fleets took their positions, and Lyra and Kale prepared to lead from the heart of the city. "Stay close," Kale said, placing a steadying hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We need to act as one. Every decision, every command, every choice counts." Lyra nodded. "I trust you, Kale. Let's protect Eloria together." The battle began with a surge of energy pulses from the alien fleet, illuminating the sky with green and violet bursts. Drones swarmed to intercept and energy shields shimmered as they absorbed the attacks. Lyra's voice rang through the control room, giving orders to adjust shields, redirect power, and deploy countermeasures. Kyle moved alongside her, analyzing patterns in real time. "Focus the upper shields on the central sector. The smaller fleets will try to break through there. We cannot let them reach the residential areas." Lyra adjusted the commands, directing drones to create a moving wall of energy that funneled the enemy ships into traps. Every decision required split-second timing. Every choice could mean life or death for thousands of citizens. Suddenly, a massive alien ship broke through the outer defenses, targeting the observation tower where Lyra and Kale were stationed. Alarms blared and red warning lights filled the room. "Lyra, move!" Kyle shouted, grabbing her hand. They ran toward the emergency pod, dodging debris and bursts of energy that shook the tower. The ship's attacks rained down around them, and Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. But Kale's presence was steady, his calm focus guiding her through the chaos. The pod shot into the sky, weaving between falling structures and laser fire. Lyra's hands gripped the controls, her mind alert to every detail. They landed safely in the palace gardens, the night sky lit with streaks of energy from the battle still raging above. Lyra turned to Kale, her chest heaving. We made it." Kale gave her a small, reassuring smile. "And now we keep going. The city depends on us." They returned to the control room where engineers and citizens alike were working furiously to repel the alien fleet. Kale's strategies, combined with Lyra's leadership, began to turn the tide. Drones moved in unpredictable patterns, shields adjusted dynamically, and the enemy ships found themselves trapped in a web of Aelorian technology and human ingenuity. As the battle raged, a smaller alien vessel broke through the defenses, heading straight for Lyra. Kyle reacted instantly, rushing to intercept. In a daring move, he maneuvered a drone to intercept the ship, deflecting its energy pulse just as it reached the observation tower. The explosion rocked the nearby structures, sending debris flying. Lyra watched in horror and awe as Kale risked his life to protect her. Her chest tightened with emotion. In that moment, she understood that courage was not just about strategy or intellect. It was about caring enough to act, even when danger was certain. The alien fleet began to falter. Their formations broke under the combined human and Aelorian strategies. Their energy pulses misaligned and less coordinated. Slowly, wave by wave, the enemy was pushed back. The citizens of Aeloria, witnessing the city's resilience, emerged from shelters and cheered as the fleet finally retreated beyond the horizon. The control room erupted in applause. Engineers hugged, citizens celebrated, and even the skeptical council members had no choice but to acknowledge the victory. One elder approached Lyra, his voice formal but respectful. "Princess Lyra, your leadership has saved Aeloria, and this human. His strategies were remarkable." Lyra turned to Kale, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. "We did it together," she said softly. Kale shook his head. "You led. I only helped. You were extraordinary." The two of them stood together, looking out over the city they had saved. The streets were filled with people celebrating their safety, and Lyra felt a surge of pride not only in herself, but in the courage and determination of the citizens who had supported them. Later, as the city recovered, Lyra and Kale walked through the palace gardens. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of alien flowers and ozone from the battle. Lyra spoke softly, almost to herself. "I never thought I would feel hope again. I never thought I could trust someone so completely." Kyle glanced at her, his expression gentle. "Trust is earned, Lyra, but it also grows when you allow yourself to see the heart of another. You allowed me to see yours." Lyra looked down, her hands clasped together. "I gave up on love long ago. I thought it was a luxury I could not afford, but now I realize that love is not about crowns or titles. It is about courage, connection, and trust." Kyle smiled. "Exactly. And sometimes it is forged in the heat of battle, when lives are at stake and hearts must be brave." Lyra laughed softly, the sound carrying over the quiet garden. For the first time in years, she felt free. Free from expectation, free from fear. Free to be Lyra, not the princess, not the symbol, but herself. That night, the palace slept under the twin moons, safe for now. Lyra stood at her window, looking out at the stars, thinking of the battles yet to come. She knew the galaxy was full of dangers, and that threats would rise again. But she also knew that she was not alone. With Kale by her side, with the courage of her people, and with the knowledge that humans and Aelorians could achieve extraordinary things together, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra understood that love, courage, and leadership were not separate. They were intertwined, and in that understanding, she found strength she had never known before. As she turned away from the window, Kale took her hand. "We survived today," he said softly, "and tomorrow we will continue to protect this world together." Lyra nodded, squeezing his hand. Together, the galaxy stretched before them, vast and full of unknown dangers. But in that moment, they faced the future with determination, courage, and a bond that could withstand even the darkest of nights. And so, the princess who had once given up on love now knew that trust, bravery, and connection could lead not only to victory in battle but to something far greater. The beginning of a love forged in courage and understanding. The city of Aeloria glimmered under the soft light of the twin moons, a testament to survival, courage, and ingenuity. The alien fleet had been driven back, their ships vanishing into the darkness of space, leaving the city battered but intact. Citizens emerged from their shelters cautiously at first, then with growing relief and joy. They walked through the streets inspecting damage, helping one another, and offering thanks to the brave souls who had saved them. Princess Lyra stood on the balcony of her tower, looking over the city she loved so dearly. Her heart was heavy with exhaustion, but light with a sense of fulfillment she had never felt before. She had led her people through the storm, guided by both her own instincts and Kale's insight. Kale joined her quietly, his presence calm and reassuring. He did not speak at first, simply standing beside her, taking in the city and the stars beyond. Lyra felt a sense of peace in that silence. A silence filled with understanding, trust, and something more she had only begun to recognize in her heart. "You did it," she said softly, almost in disbelief. "We did it. Eloria is safe," Kale shook his head. "We did it together. You made the decisions that mattered. I only helped where I could." Lyra turned to him, her silver hair shimmering in the moonlight. "Kyle, I owe you so much. Not just for your help during the battle, but for showing me that trust and connection are more important than fear and expectation." Kyle smiled gently. "That is what humans do, Lyra. We see, we care, we act. But you saw it for yourself. You led with courage, heart, and mind. That is what truly saved your city." Lyra looked away at the streets below, where citizens were repairing buildings, cleaning debris, and embracing one another. She realized that the victory was not just in repelling the aliens, but in the resilience and unity of her people. And in that moment she understood something deeper. Courage and love were inseparable. One could not exist fully without the other. She turned back to Kale, a small smile playing on her lips. "There is something I want to tell you. Something I never thought I could say again." Kale tilted his head, curious. "What is it?" Lyra took a deep breath. "I'm grateful. And more than that, I have begun to believe in love again. Not the kind of love told in stories of kings and knights, but something real. Something like what we have shared. Trust, understanding, and courage." Kale's eyes softened. "Lyra, I feel the same. I never asked for more than your name, and yet what we have, it feels bigger than anything I imagined." Lyra laughed softly, a sound of pure relief and happiness. "A name was all it took. You asked only for my name, and in return, you gave me hope, courage, and a heart that dares to trust again." They stood together in silence, the night sky above them a vast tapestry of stars, each one a reminder of the galaxy's wonders and dangers. They knew the future would bring challenges, that the alien threat might return and that there would be trials they could not foresee. But for now they allowed themselves to simply exist in this quiet victory, knowing they had each other. The Palace Council soon acknowledged Kale's role in the battle. Some members were reluctant, their pride wounded by the success of a human strategy, but they could not deny the truth. Kale's insights had saved thousands of lives, and Princess Lyra had led her people with bravery and wisdom. One counselor, once skeptical, approached Lyra with a respectful bow. "Your Highness and Kale, your efforts have proven invaluable. Eloria owes you both a debt we cannot measure." Lyra inclined her head gracefully. "We acted together. That is all that matters." Kyle gave a small nod, his humility and quiet confidence leaving an impression even on the most stubborn council members. In the following days, the city began to recover. Structures were rebuilt, energy grids repaired, and citizens returned to their routines, though they would not forget the bravery they had witnessed. Lyra took a moment each day to walk among them, speaking quietly with those who had fought and those who had endured the siege. She saw resilience, courage, and compassion in their eyes, and it filled her with pride. Kale stayed close, helping where he could, but always respecting Lyra's leadership. Together they walked through the repaired gardens, watched the twin suns rise over a city that had survived and thrived against the odds, and talked about the future, both for Eloria and for themselves. "Do you think the galaxy will test us again?" Lyra asked one morning, her gaze following a distant starship disappearing over the horizon. Kale smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But every challenge we face only makes us stronger, and we face it together, Lyra. That is what matters." Lyra nodded, feeling a quiet strength settle within her. She realized that the greatest power was not in weapons or technology, but in trust, courage, and the willingness to connect with another heart. She had learned that love was not weakness, it was the foundation of strength. One evening, as they walked along the palace gardens illuminated by glowing plants, Lyra paused. She turned to Kale, her eyes shining with emotion. "Kale, I want you to know something. I never thought I would open my heart again, but I feel ready. Ready to trust, ready to care, ready to step forward without fear." Kyle took her hand gently, his eyes reflecting the twin moons above. "And I am ready, Lyra. Ready to walk this path with you, whatever it may bring." They walked in silence for a while, hand in hand, the city peaceful around them. It was not a moment of grandeur or ceremony, but a moment of connection that mattered more than anything else. They had fought for their city, for their people, and in doing so, had discovered something even greater: the courage to care, the strength to trust, and the beginning of love born from respect, bravery, and understanding. Lyra smiled softly. "Kyle, may I ask you something?" "Anything," he replied. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice gentle. Kale chuckled softly, understanding her meaning. "I am Kale," he said simply, offering no titles, no ranks, only himself. Lyra took a deep breath and smiled, the corners of her lips turning upward in a radiant expression of hope and joy. "Kale," she said, repeating his name aloud. It felt grounding, intimate, and real, just as she had wanted her own name to be seen. The simplicity of the exchange held more power than any words, any ceremony, or any decree. Two hearts recognized each other, not for titles or expectations, but for what they were. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet rebuilding, both of the city and of relationships. Lyra and Kale continued to explore the city together, share stories of distant worlds, and plan for a future that was theirs to shape. Citizens, inspired by their courage and partnership, began to believe that even in the vast galaxy, unity and trust could overcome fear and adversity. Lyra often found herself looking at Kale, marveling at the human capacity for courage, ingenuity, and warmth. And Kale looked at her, seeing a princess not defined by her crown, but by her heart, her intelligence, and her unwavering determination to protect those she loved. One day, as they stood on the highest balcony of the palace, looking at the stars that stretched endlessly beyond the city, Lyra spoke softly. "Kale, I once believed love was impossible for me, that it was a dream I could never have, but now I know that love can be real, even in the most unlikely places, and I want to live that reality with you." Kyle's eyes shone with emotion. "Lyra, I want that too, and I will do everything I can to protect it, just as we have protected this city." Lyra smiled, her heart swelling with hope. She realized that the galaxy was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but she no longer faced it alone. With Kale by her side, she felt ready for whatever might come. Together, they could face the unknown, explore new worlds, and build a life founded on courage, trust, and love. As the twin moons bathed the city in silver light, Lyra took Kale's hand and held it tightly. "This is the beginning," she said. Kale squeezed her hand in return. "The beginning of everything." And so the princess who had once given up on love found herself standing in a new world, a world where courage, trust, and human ingenuity had triumphed over fear, where hearts could connect beyond titles and expectations, and where love could grow quietly but powerfully, even in a galaxy full of stars. The city of Eloria thrived. Citizens rebuilt and celebrated, inspired by the courage and partnership of their leaders. Princess Lyra and Kale, side by side, looked to the future with hope. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of adventures, challenges, and possibilities, but together, they knew they could face anything. And in the quiet of the palace gardens, under the stars and twin moons, two hearts beat in unison, a promise of love, courage, and a new beginning. A beginning born from a name, a spark of trust, and the bravery to care. The story of Princess Lyra and Kale became legend, not because of titles or battles alone, but because it reminded the galaxy that humanity, its courage, creativity, and capacity for love, could change everything.